Chapter. This is the March 24, 2015 meeting of the Town Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Fairfield. The first item on the agenda is Bills and Communications, the meeting minutes from March 10, 2015. Motion to approve by Commissioner Alessi. Second by Commissioner Jacobson. Anybody have any questions? Comments? Changes? I didn't have it. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Minutes carried unanimously. Next item is old business. 4185 Blackrock Turnpike. Application of New Way Associates LLC to establish a design commercial district on land presently zoned neighborhood design district and residence AAA. Public hearings on February 10, 24, and March 10, 2015.
All right,
Oh, you know what? I did. I jumped over new application recommending public hearing. So I apologize. I skipped over that one. Second item is 55 Miller Street, special permit application of Vincente for an addition to an existing restaurant in the center design district.
this is 55 degrees, an existing restaurant on Miller Street. There is an outdoor patio out front, portion of which has a roof over it. They want to redo the whole front of the building and kind of push out with an addition on the front that will be enclosed and reduce the size of their patio space. But it is an addition to the building that does require special permits for you.
The hearing is required.
Yes.
Have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Alessi. Second by Commissioner Kelly. Any discussion? Required under our regulations. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Approved. Public hearing unanimously. Next item is old business. 4185 Blackrock Turnpike, application of New Way Associates LLC to establish a design commercial district on land presently zoned neighborhood design district and residence AAA. Public hearings on February 10 and 24 and March 10, 2015.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Also, as you know, B is there's also part of that application a special permit application to establish an office. What I'll do is just briefly go over the actions and findings that are required, briefly just outline again for you what's being proposed, and we'll go from there. The sequence of action on these types of applications is there are two actions required. First, you would act on the zone change application, and then after that, you would act on the special permit. Again, as you know, this proposed there's a proposed parcel A. It's going to be 2.3 acres of a 17-acre parcel being applied for a zone change, as the chairman mentioned, from neighborhood design business district and residence AAA to design commercial district. Along with the proposal, a 50 by 300 foot strip of land is proposed along Blackrock Turnpike to establish a required 200 foot frontage for the proposed 15-acre parcel B, which would remain as part of this application. Division. The proposed use of the property is for a 25,000 square foot office, two-story medical office building with associated landscaping, 125 parking spaces, and a stormwater management facility, which we'll all describe at the public hearings. This proposal would remove the existing garden center use and the structures that are there, and as was reported, I will do very briefly, but at the hearing, the traffic report, the access would be limited to one access point to Blackrock Turnpike, including the roadway widening to accommodate a northbound bypass in the area of the proposed access drive. So again, as I mentioned, the sequence of review on this is that first we would consider the zone change. And what I've given you is a list of findings. These findings are basically outlined in the state statutes that enable the Planning and Zoning Commission to give the Planning and Zoning Commission authority to initiate zone changes. And I'll just go through them real quick and answer the questions you have. At this point, turn it back to the chairman. Again, number one, these allowed to discuss at the hearing, is the proposed zone change consistent with the plan of conservation development? Number two, does time, experience, and reasonable planning for contemporary or future conditions indicate the need for the proposed zone change? And again, this isn't specifically the need for what's being proposed, it's the need for the zone change, design commercial district. Number three, have circumstances that may have changed substantially to merit the requested zone change. And number four, has it been demonstrated that the proposed zone change is warranted and would serve the general health, welfare, and safety of the town. And number five, that the proposed zone change promote a level of development that would serve to protect property values in the neighborhood and enhance the community. And number six, would the proposed zone change permit a level of development that would increase undue traffic congestion? Again, those were the findings. Those are the findings that are outlined again in the statutes and the requirements of the commission to make these types of decisions. And with that, unless there's any questions, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn this portion of it, and then pending the action on this, we'll discuss this question.
Right. Yeah, unless there's a motion to consider the two items together, they are independent, and the zone change should be coming in first as it appears on our agenda. So the item's been introduced with a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to deny the application.
Motion to deny by Commissioner Pinelli. Anyone? Need a second. Seconded by Commissioner Alessi. Commissioner Pinelli, want to start?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll just go down through my list of concerns as outlined with the standard for us acting in our legislative capacity. It's important to note that as we're considering this, the judiciary, when they look at what in state statutes, when they look at zoning commissions, what their powers are. There are times we act in our administrative capacity when essentially we are really an arm of the town plan and zoning department. We really are limited regulatorily, but in this case, we're acting in legislative capacity. We're actually making law by making the decision to change a zone. And in doing so, we really have to carefully weigh all considerations. This isn't simply a matter of, whether or not a project is, nice or not, or someone finds it attractive, or it might, it's a matter of, does the zone change, does the legislative action of making the zone change, is that one that's, wise for us to do for the town? So, first, is the proposed zone change consistent with the plan of conservation and development? I would argue that under section 11.3.1 of the master plan of the town plan and zoning of the plan of conservation and development, under characteristics and under directives for Greenfield Hill and policies, that we look to what is written there. And it talks a little bit about what kind of density. And it says, zoning regulation amendments which would increase permitted density of development should be discouraged in order to preserve the character of the area. And what is that character? It's residential. So my view is that from looking at the plan of conservation development, that if we look to the policies advocated by the developers of that document, that we would have to say no to this. Additionally, there was raised by the applicant this deeper into the document, the concept that is listed about coordinating the needs for things like medical care. That's absolutely true. And it's vital that we not somehow be closed to needed medical services if they're appropriate for the site and they make sense. This commission just in the last year or two has approved the retasking of the Sisense clothing to a very large service center for those in need of immediate care for orthopedic services. Also, in just the last 2 months, we've approved small developments for medical services right in the parking lot by Chinzano's. So clearly, if there's a need, we have to coordinate and make those decisions. But My view is that citing that doesn't implore us to construct any medical building that happens to be proposed or medical office use that happens to be proposed to us. This time and experience and responsible planning for contemporary or future conditions indicate the need for the proposed zone change. Well, from experience, I can only tell you that this proposal in similar form, similar enough that the applicant and the Inland Wetlands Commission described it as essentially the same application, was rejected by this commission. Additionally, we have on 3 occasions while I've served on this commission rejected similar kinds of medical office uses just up at exit 47 on the Merritt Parkway as well. So from my experience, at least as a member of this commission, I don't believe that, that approving this application is wise or responsible planning. We're looking at contemporary or future conditions needing the proposed zone change. Well, the zone change would create we can break this into 2 pieces really. First, the medical use, and then broadly the commercial zone change. The medical use, well, this is 25,000 square feet of additional, what is described would be medical office space. It could be for any commercial purpose if medical office didn't work out. But that 25,000 square feet represents a nearly 100% increase then in the total inventory of commercial office space in the town of Fairfield that could be used for medical office. The estimates we received were that there is approximately 30,000 square feet of commercial office space that could be used for medical, with the largest block being 8,000 square feet. I asked Chairman Penzer of the Economic Development Commission whether or not there had been a study done about what the impact would be of virtually doubling the amount of commercial office space in town made available to medical, what that would do to the current already vacant space and the owners of that space. He told me that no study of any kind like that was done, although there have been studies done by the Economic Development Commission, excuse me, the Economic Development Commission, but in this case it was not done. So I just don't think test 2 there regarding the zone change is met. In terms of the medical piece of this. The broader issue of the commercial change, that is to change this to a commercial district. I've been on the commission 8 years. I can't recall where a purely residential parcel or surrounded by purely residential combined with a tiny bit of neighborhood business district was ever converted to commercial. This is a residential neighborhood. I don't see how it's responsible planning to convert a chunk of residential to commercial in this situation. It would be an island of commercial. Perhaps a toehold for larger commercial development in the future, but to me it doesn't meet that test. Have circumstances in the neighborhood changed substantially enough to merit the requested zone change? It's been residential. Has there been demonstrated that this proposed zone change is warranted and would serve the general health, welfare, and safety of the town? Well, we certainly have enough commercial office space to house whatever medical tenants we need, and there seems to be some debate within the industry about whether eventually there'll be large conglomerations or their smaller spaces will be the way to go in terms of how medical services will be delivered over the next 10 or 15 years. We've approved 2 very different kinds of projects. One's very large, one fairly small. So I'm not sold that a medical use is particularly warranted. In terms of serving the general health, welfare, and safety of the town, with this much open space, open office space already available, it doesn't seem that there's a terrific pressing need for the project. So for me at least, again, test 4, I don't see that, converting a chunk of land in the middle of a residential district to commercial, something that would be fairly unprecedented for us. We haven't done it very often at all, would be warranted. Does the proposed zone change promote a level of development that would serve and protect property values in the neighborhood and enhance the community? Well, we heard from property owners in the community. Their attorney spoke, Mr. Green, and they were very displeased and believed that this would have a negative impact on their property values. There was a discussion, for example, of the large 35-foot retaining wall that people were going to have to look at, and there was a debate about how much they would see, but generally there was no evidence presented to us of how somehow property values would be enhanced, that's for sure, by the applicant, but there was great concern by those who were represented by Mr. Green about what this would be the impact. Finally, with the proposed zone change permit a level of development that would increase undue traffic congestion. It does say undue traffic congestion here, and while we had a traffic report that talks about minor changes in terms of what is level of service, essentially what the wait times are at stoplights and things like that, I'm concerned broadly about converting property like this to commercial as the first step towards commercializing this section of town. I'm not just concerned about how long cars wait at stoplights when I think about undue traffic congestion. I'm worried about things like how people can get about on bikes, jogging, etc. It would be madness for someone to think that they could run or ride their bike, say, at the exits in Norwalk or on the Merritt from areas south of the Merritt, north of the Merritt. If you saw someone out trying to jog there or run or ride their bike, you'd think they were crazy. Why would they be interacting with the level of traffic that's developed in those exits? To me, this is a potential step in that direction, that we will be moving toward a ever more commercialized zone there. 2 acres today, who knows what the future holds. Finally, the last thing I'd say is that regardless of what anyone feels about the current proposed use, understand this is a commercial rezoning. Rezoning, by and large, residential property to commercial. What can be there 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Who on this commission will be here even to certainly know? My view is that there's also this talk of the idea that this is in precedent setting. It seems to work both ways. If we were to approve this, then suddenly maybe there is a precedent set, and maybe then there's expansion. On the other hand, when it doesn't suit an applicant's interest, its president said we give the opposite story. For me, at least, I, for one, am not willing to introduce commercial into a AAA zone in this area. I think it's the wrong way to go, and when we have this kind of discretion, we have to act very carefully. And so I urge you to deny this application. I vote would be for denial. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly.
I say it's the first discussion. I'm still up here with him in the world, so I want to listen to other people that see what they have to say.
Well, to present the flip side of opinions on this, I would support this application. To go through the required zone change findings one by one, as Mr. Kennelly did, Commissioner Kennelly. The purpose of the zone change consistent with the plan of conservation is to preserve the character of Greenfield Hill. Although this intersection is technically part of the Greenfield Hill, it's at the intersection of the Merritt Parkway and Blackrock Turnpike, which is about as unappealing a residential spot as one could get. I can't imagine wanting to live at that intersection. This seems as good a use for the land as any we're likely to get. Commissioner Kennelly says that the need for this size of office space for medical uses isn't necessary because we have it in nearby communities, and we've recently approved a number of smaller use medical facilities. To me, I think that that's a determination that's best left to the owners of the property who've done studies regarding what's going to be economically feasible. If they think that a 25,000 square foot medical facility is economically feasible, there's an audience for it, there's a market for it, and we don't have anything like that in Fairfield. Have circumstances in the neighborhood changed substantially enough to merit? I think they have. Whether or not there's a precedent for converting a big chunk of residential to commercial, I think that the nature of that intersection across from the Hi-Ho Motel, whether it stays the Hi-Ho Motel or not, is not a residentially suitable location, and that this may not have always been the case, but I believe it's the case now, and therefore I think they have changed. Has it been demonstrated that the proposed zone change is warranted and would serve the general health, welfare, and safety of the town? I think it is. I think that the type of medical services you can get in a very large facility are going to be substantially different than what you get in the emergency care and other things available. Space does make a difference. It would be interesting to see what could be made of that isn't available in the town. It was noted that you have to go to other towns to get the large medical practices, and so that by definition says it's not there in Fairfield. Does the proposed zone change promote a level of development that would serve to protect property values in the neighborhood and enhance the community? Commissioner Canales said no evidence was presented that it would enhance property values. I think part of that is that there are no immediately contiguous residential properties. There's one guy who's sort of up the hill, and he has no objection to it, and everybody else is fairly distant from it. So it's hard to imagine that this is going to have any impact on those more distant residential properties. And then the last point, that it's a step toward an ever more commercialized zone. It could be if we let it, but it doesn't de facto have to be. We get the decision on every one of them. For this particular location, I can't see it being used for residential purposes, and so therefore I would support a reasonable commercial use for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. Commissioner Galbraith?
Well, I'm going to keep it pretty short and sweet here. I agree 100% with Commissioner Coleman. I think this is a good location for this facility. What's there now is not increasing property value. I think by making a zone change that it will. And again, I don't think we're setting a precedent at all by allowing this zone change. Again, all these are going to come, anything in the future is going to come before this commission, and we'll have to make another decision. But I think this is probably the best idea for this location right now. It's right on the Merritt Parkway. There's no immediate housing next to it, as pointed out. So I absolutely am going to support this.
Would you like to?
I mean, listen, the only questions I'm facing right now that I have is, after living in Stratford and seeing what's happening in Stratford along there, still going on there, and now I'm the one that actually put the lighting plan in for this property. I live past this property. I pass this property every day. So, I would like to see something done on this property. I mean, well, then the other side of me is telling me, okay, we brought up during the hearing is, well, what's going to happen to the rest of the property? And what are we going to see developed in the back? And we can get an answer to that. So, what I'm torn is, okay, do we say no just for the sake of no because we don't want to switch the zone and then we're stuck with the light for another 5 or 10 years, whatever it may be, which is also what we're facing in Stratfield now? Or is this a scaled down version of what we had a few years ago, which I didn't like, that it was just way too big, but this is a smaller version of that and manageable, and I think it looks better than what was there before. So, those are the things I'm going back and forth now, but I still haven't said, okay, what was this room said, let's do this.
Yeah. I mean, I just have a couple comments. I mean, I'm largely undecided myself as well. I agree that there is no precedent. I mean, we take each one of these applications on their own merit, and we sit in our legislative capacity, we have to decide whether the proposed lot is more properly zoned commercial, not for medical office building. That's the second application before us, to determine whether it is in the town's best interest to rezone these 2 acres from residential to commercial. Then we get to the question of whether the project that's been proposed is appropriate and suitable for the rezone. My primary concern is traffic. The intersection there is largely incapable of handling what is flowing there now. I was up at Hi-Ho for dinner at the Barcelona a couple of weeks ago, and the people that we were with had parked across the street. There's going to be no parking sharing arrangement, as we've heard, going forward. Well, they're just doing it, I guess. It's by necessity, I guess. The volume of cars here is going to be significant. Is it going to rise to the level of turning an intersection from a B to a D? The traffic engineer told us no, but it's still gonna be a significant impact, and it's gonna grow. It is AAA, you know, whether we say it's a residential, not a suitable place for residential, you know, that is the zone which this property abuts. And while they didn't commit to what their future plan was for it, they did insinuate that it would be developed in some way as residential. So there will be residential abutting this property. Either that, or as Commissioner Kennelly suggests, it will open the door for them to come back and say, well, now we've got a total commercial on this property, and we should rezone the rest of it as commercial, because now that only fits, you know, hand in glove with what's now been rezoned. So, I mean, I'm torn. I really am struggling with it. I'm interested to hear what Commissioner Barron's has to say.
Probably not going to be pursued. I think it was what Mr. Alessi and you just said, Thomas point, just waiting to be convinced. I mean, I listened to three nights of public hearing on this application. I was actually impressed with them. I thought it was a good application. I think, you know, I think people got a little too into the need and assessing the need. We don't assess the business viability or something. The key question, I think, Nelly and everybody agrees is what should this zone be? It's designed commercial. We're not, you know, medical office building, that's the only thing that can go in design commercial. So I think that really is the key question. There is some commercial there now, as you said, the high home hotels there. I get very scared of people crossing that street. Anytime people are crossing a street that they have no business crossing, you know, it's a very scary thing. I mean, that's what you have now, right there. You know, very concerned about traffic. We talk about these things sometimes and just say, oh yeah, well, you know, we look at a specific measurement and a specific sight line. You know, we had, I mean, a lot of people killed in both Bridgeport, Fairfield, and Westport, walking on roads lately. So, you know, I'm largely concerned about things like people crossing Blackrock Turnpike. But they wouldn't in this case, but that's no small matter. I think the key decision is to whether to rezone or not. It's a big decision, and it's a big change. We're talking about AAA design commercial. That's not a simple downgrading of the zone. That's about as big a stretch as you can go, other than maybe going from that to industrial. I'm also concerned with parcel B. It's not part of this application, but just, you know, they've got 17 acres there. It's not going to be nothing. I don't think it's realistic for us to sit around here and hope that, well, nothing will ever get developed. There'll be a partially blighted property, but nothing will go there. Something will go there. But I'm concerned about that parcel as well. The driveway, too. There were very few options for where they could put that driveway. I mean, it almost had to be in that exact space where they couldn't achieve sight lines whatsoever.
That was the testimony, that it could not be moved further down because the sight lines wouldn't be sufficient, and if you moved it up further into Blackrock Turnpike, then because of the hill, the sight lines would be insufficient. This was the only place on that property.
So I'm torn. I mean, I'm not as appalled by commercial development on that spot, just like Mr. Cowley said. It's right next to the Merritt Parkway. Yes, it's Greenfield Hill. Yes, it's a AAA zone. But if we're going to put something there, you know, right next to a highway is also, again, maybe, I mean, I'm different. I'm not as appalled by, like, people from out of town might come and use our services. Well, they do that. We go to other towns to use their services. I don't think, you know, regional medical center, I think it would benefit some people in Fairfield that would like to go see the providers in town, which is going to be another town. So, but I think there is some benefit to the town there. I'm just still torn, especially on some of the plan of conservation development. If you look for low density housing, it is mentioned Route 58 congestion, which we do have. There is talk of preserving character. Not as strong about that, especially a place right next to the Merritt Parkway. And doesn't serve a significant community need. Again, I'm not so sure about the medical building. I think, you know, a commercial building, okay. So, again, I don't have any, I know you're looking at me for answers.
So
the same questions as you guys.
No, I'm listening to what you're saying. We're basically saying that I may see deeper commercial use of this spot, I may not see deeper medical use of this spot.
I'm saying I may see the need for commercial, and if it's medical, that's fine, but I'm considering it just the bigger picture, that we're asked to rezone it to, like Mr. Wagner said, that we're actually rezoning it from AAA to design commercial, not necessarily, and it's to enable the medical office building.
Right.
But I don't have that big, I don't have an objection to the medical office, but I think it's a business case about
Well, that's-
what type of, building.
That's what's on the table now.
Yeah.
Well, we could approve the zone change and deny the special permit application and have, see what other commercial uses, so what the applicant might come back with. I mean, I don't know that that's practical, but that's one permutation. Commissioner Kent.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Let me do all I can to maybe encourage you and the Secretary and the Vice Chairman. The Merritt Parkway Conservancy, perhaps you recall their testimony. They described this, and again, I could care less really ultimately about, I'm sure you never know how a rendering will be. They described it as the big blue whale. They talked about how they're concerned about how this is going to look. Look, we already know the visual impact of the hi-ho. It's a negative one. But the folks who are concerned about the quality, you say, oh, it's just near a highway. Look, I'm all for appropriate development, the commercial development, redevelopment that can go on, that can be medical. I mean, look what's going on with Systems with orthopast. It's terrific. I mean, they're taking something that was, and I have no problem with the idea that the community could need medical services, but there's a host of other places where you're not doing something as significant as Commissioner Barrett points out, as taking AAA zone property and making it commercial property. But this idea that because it's near the Merritt, oh yeah, we can just put some commercial there. The whole idea is that Fairfield's exits have been one that we've guarded very judiciously. Look up at exit 47. Commissioner Barrett and I again and again voted against medical office buildings near that Jefferson Street Circle area up at exit 47. But there's medical office buildings all around there. We're in our legislative capacity here. It's not sort of like, oh, gee, maybe commercial wouldn't be so bad, or gee, I'd like to improve the value of the property for the owner. We're talking about how we're going to change our laws with the considerations what the impact of the future will be. Okay? What's going to happen there? No, I'm not saying it's going to be Wilton 7 tomorrow, but that's rarely how these things go. But we have, if you think about the past, I'm saying that precedent holds and you ties your hands. If you think about the thought process of this commission in denying 3 applications, at least in the last 5 or 6 years, at exit 47, where there already is medical office, it was because a lot of the very things that the members of this commission already had mentioned. Traffic, they're concerned about it. They're concerned about the fact that there's going to be, people coming on and off the Merritt to visit. I have no problem with outsiders using services here in Fairfield. I think it's terrific. People come off 95 to use OrthoFast, off the Circle, please do. But I also think that we also get concerned about things like the urgent care center just off of Stilson near Blackrock, where we've had concerns about, oh gosh, people, driving there and being in a hurry and stuff like that. Well, my view is that once you begin to add folks coming into this area from the Merritt, you're adding potentially long-term a desire to do more there. In other words, when we make this first step towards converting AAA to commercial, we are, I believe, really, opening the door, because now we said, well, commercial could work here because it's next to the Merritt. Well, I would argue that, like I said, Fairfield's Merritt exits have been the ones we've guarded very carefully so they don't become like criminal laws. One last thing, if I could, and that is this idea that that a residential property, a residential development can't be there, so therefore we should change things. There's almost 18 acres, I think it's 17.72 or 17.79, the total A and B together. That's a huge chunk of AAA zone residential property. A huge chunk. There is no one who's interested in living in that neighborhood? How do we know that? Where's the study? I respect Commissioner Coleman. She's level-headed and smart, and we've been on the same side on a bunch of issues, so she has my highest respect in terms of her position. But where's the substantive evidence that 17, almost 18 acres of residential in a AAA zone can't be, there's no one who wants to live in Greenfield Hill because it's a little close to the Merritt? So we gotta make it a commercial zone? I think there's a lot less radical argument to be made over that. I mean, if we take it.
Yeah, there's a couple things going on there. The topography of the 17 acres really is not, it's not all.
I don't say every, I'm not saying every acre it is, but I'm saying as a chunk.
But, to be fair, you know, I asked the applicant specifically what was the plan for development of the back of the parcel, and they were non-committal. They intimated that, you know, residential possibly, but they didn't have anything to say on that point. And it was argued that that wasn't relevant. I think that is highly relevant.
I agree with you.
Because I think that the plan for development of that parcel is what, in part, we need to consider as to whether the zone change of the 2 acres is warranted.
Right.
So I do find that to be highly relevant. And if there was some plan of how that would be developed to inspire us to agree that the 2 acres should be rezoned to commercial in some way to support the plan for development of the back parcel or otherwise, you know, that might be something to support a decision here one way or the other. So that's also why I'm a bit on the fence. So
You made a good point, Mr. Chairman, because, you know, something that the Vice Chairman said a while back in the course of our kind of discourse about this, which is, you know, if you owe the bank $1,000, it's your problem, but if you owe the bank, you know, $100 million, it's the bank's problem. And I guess what I'm trying to say, the point that was trying to be made, I guess, in that analogy is that, you know, this is a big chunk of high-profile land. People are going to see what's there from the merit for as long as it's there. So I agree with you that I think that there's definitely value in the owner and the community and maybe this commission and town economic development staff talking about what are you going to do with 18 acres right on the Merrick Parkway, rather than us being offered, well, here's 2 acres we're going to do for commercial, which right now will be medical, and we'll see what we'll do with the other 14 or 15. That to me is not a thoughtful planning process before you go ahead and ask to go from AAA to commercial, you know, overwhelmingly AAA.
there was and thank you, Commissioner Calvo. There was one other thing I wanted to say in response to your earlier comments, which was that I do not think that because it's next to the Merrick, it's okay to rezone to commercial. And you know, that I think you know, with Merrick Conservancy coming in to tell us about the history of that you know, that parkway, and I think it is in our town's future interest to protect that and to make sure that it is consistent with that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah. Commissioner Jacobson, you haven't said anything yet. Commissioner Coleman?
I went back and forth on this application several times. Right now, I will not approve it because I agree that we should protect the zone and have a bigger plan for the whole acreage.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacobson. Commissioner Coleman?
I'm still staunchly in favor of it. To address Commissioner Kennelly's comments about who wouldn't want to live on those 17 and a half acres. The 17 and a half acres are not what's being put before us for a zone change. I'm looking at that corner across from the Hi-Ho that's on Blackrock and the Merritt and saying, well, I want to live there. And, you know, AAA zoning implies large property size and probably fairly nice houses. Who is going to want to live on that corner? Not to address the other portion of the 17 acres, but that corner is what is being put before us, and I just can't see it being used for AAA residential. Regarding the Merritt Conservancy, I really applaud their efforts, but I have to tell you, when I'm driving down the Merritt, I don't notice what's behind the bank of trees. I notice the rhododendrons and azaleas that they plant every year and then don't water and then they die. So, I mean, my focus on the Merritt is really much more on the immediate landscaping rather than sticking my head up to look at any building that may show across the treetops. So, I still think that Greenfield Hill is a misnomer for this location. It may technically be part of Greenfield Hill, but its character is so far removed from the, you know, winding tree-lined roads of Greenfield Hill that I can't see its use for anything other than commercial.
Yeah, but the corner, the very corner, is neighborhood design district. Okay? I mean, the very corner of what is sought to be rezoned, you know, is a neighborhood design district. So it's you know, the the thought, I believe, in the current zone was that on that corner would be neighborhood design, and then, of course, behind it and the rest of the parcel and the areas surrounding are the AAA. So, you know, it's not like it wasn't considered when the zone was being planned out that there would be a house on the corner of Congress there, right at the on-ramp to the mountains. Okay, you know, so that's, Mr. Kelly?
You know, just, you brought up the neighborhood design business district. It's worth noting, you know, I mean, again, I hear this, you know, well, there's no precedent ever set by any decision, but gee, you know, if I thought I had a terrific proposal to start converting more neighborhood design business districts up against other residential neighborhoods, why would I come to this commission? If we're willing to convert a neighborhood design business district in and AAA together to commercial, why not everywhere? If you're willing to do neighborhood, not to say, I mean, the whole purpose of neighborhood design business districts were to give a transition from maybe a more busy roadway where there would be some interest in commercial activity, but this would be low-key, serving the locality's interest, then moving to residential. We're essentially going to combine it here. If you're going to combine AAA and neighborhood design into commercial, it seems like there's probably plenty of spots all over town.
Well, no, I understood. It's not working. I mean, it hasn't worked for a long time. And then that is the struggle. And that's, Commissioner Coleman, I hear that, I feel that, I understand it, and I think so do the folks who live and drive by and work there and live there. You know, it hasn't worked for a long time. And so, I think that goes to, you know, the warranting the change and the need for the change, because it hasn't worked for a long time. Commissioner Barnes?
Yeah, again, still struggling. We need more time on this one. I don't know. You know, what you said, Commissioner Wagner, you know, parcel B is highly relevant. I'm very concerned about that. I'm very concerned about downgrading the zone. And the fact that the corner is a neighborhood design, but it hasn't worked because of the current use there. But, you know, you could put something there that would serve the benefit of the neighborhood design business district, to have some sort of a store there or something where people could get something on the way up to Greenfield Hill, I think would be advantageous, which could be done within the current zone and still put some residential around it. You know, Mr. Gillespie probably would have it that way. It would probably be good to have some, you know, place you could stop on the way. So, I mean, it's zoned that way. Mr. Wagner said it hasn't, you're right, it hasn't worked with the current use, but
Not the current use. What I'm suggesting is that it's been zoned this way for a long time, and for a long time now, with recent history, it hasn't worked, right? And I don't know whether that's because the owner, whether this one or past, hasn't wanted to make it work or whatever. It's just, but you know, you also raise a good point about time. What's the deadline here? May 14th. May 14th. You know,
we got at least 3
I'm not
people here that aren't that
convinced.
sure. We can't deliberate, we can read, think, I don't know.
There are various reasons why we sought to table and have more time to consider certain, you know, different applications. Being on the fence, it would, is everybody ready to vote? You've been ready since last week. Is anyone interested in tabling the item?
I'm interested in read you guys.
You would? Motion's been made and seconded, so that's gotta be, how do we,
I mean, listen, just to set it brings up a good point, to see the applicant come back and say, okay, this is the whole 17 acres, this is our layout, that's it.
No, I can't.
I understand that, but what I'm saying, that would have been a lot easier on everybody up here, but, you know, I understand that they're discussing just the 2 acres here down the bottom.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Look, I understand there's anxiety, but I think the anxiety that probably the majority here feel is over the uncertainty of what will happen with the highly visible piece of Fairfield. That's what you're concerned about. Now, there doesn't seem to be great conviction, except for, well, let's say, in everyone's mind, or let's say perhaps right now we should declare the majority's mind, that going from AAA and neighborhood design to commercial is the way to go. But there is confusion and concern. To me, the answer isn't so much about whether we continue to lay out this decision. It's whether or not a denial prompts then an engagement with the applicant and the owner. Look, I want everybody to make their money. I want everyone to do well. I don't want to hurt anyone. That's not the purpose here. The idea is, I'm saying that we're essentially being told we want a commercial change, a commercial zone, and a pig in the poke, and what's back behind it. We don't know. I don't think it's unreasonable to author a denial, and it's a process. And then to sit down and look at this. This is, like I said, it's like, oh, you know, in this case, we're the bank, and we're the ones owed the $100 million. This is a big chunk of visible Fairfield that everyone who drives the Merit's going to see. Are we that ready right now to just to say, okay, great, change what's been there, you know, or how it's looked the last 200 years, because it's not working right now because the nursery, the plant factory, the nursery that was there for 40 years has gone belly up, and now it's an empty lot. Maybe there's a lot of good choices. And there's an attractive, cute set of boutique stores in the neighborhood design business district like Commissioner Barrett is talking about. Maybe there's a reasonable mixed-use residential and commercial development that can be worked out that has an affordable component. There seems to be some dark hinting about what that might be. One of the people came up during the public testimony. I don't know what that answer is. But I know that rushing, that a denial isn't the end of this process. There was a denial previously on this, and now the applicants come back. It was somewhat scaled down from 35 to 25, but a lot of that 35 was the garage that went out, and now it's a parking lot. So my answer would be to support the motion to deny, and be willing, this commission to be willing, you, Mr. Chairman, to be willing as part of an interagency effort to sit down and look at this. No one wants to deny the owner the opportunity to be successful. No one wants the property to be a failure and to be in light. But it does seem that we need, with such a large property, to have a coherent approach. And then when a property is this large, and is this going to be seen not just by people from our area or by people from neighboring towns, but by people who drive through the city, we ought to maybe have a coherent, thoughtful process, a planned and thoughtful process. I don't think putting off the denial starts that process. I think a denial does, and then we move from there. And I fully support any effort that puts you as part of that as our chairman, and then hopefully other agencies, the Economic Development Commission, others, and the owner, of course. There are representatives from the stakeholders from the area, and let's do that. But the process begins with yay or nay. And my view is right now, these broad questions on such a big issue, to me, require, I think at least, a denial for now, and then a process begun to see what happens with this very visible site in Fairfield, and large sites.
Well, we also have to take into effect that the property across the street just sold as well too, and I'm sure that's going to come for us as well.
Right, so there you go. That's enough. My point exactly. There you go. In other words, this is all going to be in flux. Look, if 3 months from now we come back and everyone says, wow, a 25,000 square foot building and some kind of thing back there actually is the right match. We really can't. We've looked at it. There's studies. No one wants to do residential with single families. And across the street, there's some synergies. Then we've done it. But to just say, okay, we'll start with 2 acres of commercial. Well, now we're basically saying, well, we're really not sure how the whole thing will play out. But yeah, sure, we'll just go from AAA neighborhood design to, as Commissioner Barrett put it, one of the most significant downgrades in zone you can do, AAA neighborhood to commercial. Only one maybe more of a commercial downgrade would be to industrial. So I think a coherent process, looking at the entire area, with stakeholders and town leaders, yourself included, Mr. Chairman, is the wisest approach, and that would be given the denial tonight to move this off our plate for now.
The delay, however, will give others time to consider an approval. So, I mean, your comments are well taken, understandably in support of your motion. But a denial at this stage doesn't also presuppose that the applicant will be interested in engaging, and it may not be in our hands to dictate that.
Well, just to, I don't want to, your discretion, Mr. Chairman, but I would just respond to that by saying that the only way that you can engage the applicant is by having a denial and beginning again. I mean, I'm just trying to address the things that are being expressed here. A rereading of the current record will be, I would think, unless some golden nugget appears within the record that I don't recall, is going to lead us to the same position, which is, on some level, probably there's a weak majority here that's uncomfortable with the idea of jumping into this downgraded zone, because we know there's larger issues involved. I'm just saying the denial is not meant as like completely denying that now and forever that we say no to this. That includes myself. But I do think on the narrow basis for what we were presented, that we're not helping the effort to wisely plan this very visible and very large section of Fairfield. And I urge you to vote and have the denial, and then consider later in a larger context whether or not we think that some kind of approval that works here is possible.
Yeah, no, and I understand. Did you have something?
No, I would like to leave it to you.
Well, because, thinking about the public hearing, right? So we had, the last time this came before us, we had a parade of people notably against the zone change, okay? This time, I don't know, other than Attorney Green and the American Conservancy who raised, issues about view, the landscaping and the buffer with the merit, et cetera. There was no one that spoke against this application. Dr. McDonald, who was over at the Fairfield Hunt, who was the spokesman in the last application, while they didn't take a vote per se on this one, he spoke in favor of the application. We had Michael Moss. We should approve. We had,
We had a few letters.
a handful, okay? There was not a public outcry against this application the way that we saw in the prior application. That to me is a signal from the area residents in Greenfield Hill that there is an appetite for this kind of change on this parcel and in this application in the way it was presented by the applicant. And that's my read. I mean, we're here to represent the residents of the town, and so I'm struggling with that.
Well, can I just to try to counter that a little bit, I would say two things. One, when the large group of folks were here last time, I think the weather was a lot better than it's been over the course of the meetings that we've done. So we've had some of the harshest and most difficult weather. Mr. Green, the attorney, was not here by himself as some lone wolf. He was representing a large group of constituents who didn't want to. Yes, he was. He wasn't here as a lone protester.
He represented the Merit Conservancy as well as the
Greenfield Hunt, I believe.
No, the Greenfield Hill Village Improvement. Okay, they were not. He was not here on behalf of individual residents banding together to say we object to this zone change. In fact, they went and presented to the Greenfield Hunt. The members, the residents there attended the meeting. There was no vote taken per se, but we had a resident who attended the meeting come to say, I support this application, and I don't know of any other residents who are against it, and, want to approve it.
He
Yeah,
spoke-
no petitions. Do we have any petitions filed on this? No petitions were filed on this.
I believe that same individual spoke on behalf of the same application that we turned down a few years ago.
That's my point. That is exactly my point. Dr. McDonald came here on behalf of the Greenfield Hunt on the first application, speaking on behalf of the residents after a vote had been taken, and they urged us to deny the zone change in the first application. And now they're here supporting, well, not they, because he is not representing as a group, but at least we had someone from that area who was here to say, I support it. And I was at the meeting, and I can tell you firsthand from what I saw, I didn't hear anybody who was against it. So, I struggle with that.
You know what I think it is? I think now what you're seeing is like, you're seeing Stratford, neighborhood, which is probably just tired of looking at it. I think that's why also this time around you haven't seen any complaints like you did last time. People in Stratford saying, we're getting a daycare, great, something, finally, 10 years, we're getting a daycare. It's not what we would have probably taken in the first place, but we're just tired of looking at the Stratford market. And I think that what you're seeing now, the residents on this side of town, all over there on Blackrock Turnpike, and that's why I don't think anybody came out this time around, because it's like, plant factories, it's just such polite. It's a dusty. The idea to keep the thing in blight, if the name should take anything, I don't know, but I'm just, it just seems to me.
And that's a struggle,
That's why-
right? Because
Yes,
we also don't want to
yes.
sit here and say,
Because we don't want to say we just want to put anything.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't want to put
Yeah,
anything.
you don't want to.
It's precisely.
I understand that.
So that's the struggle, and that's why
But that's what-
tabling the item and giving us more opportunity to consider this might be the right thing to do.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah.
Can you jump in? I have, as you guys know, I'm willing to support this. I think it's a good application. Again, I think the zone change can be necessary. I'm not saying the medical building is, the proper thing for this. I know that. I know that's the next part of this. However, every letter that we've gotten, everybody has specified that this property is a blight. So I agree 100% with Commissioner Leslie. I think it is that same mentality that we have over in Stratfield, that we're just kind of beating down at this point. We've got that blight sitting there. We want something. Anything is better than what's there now. And now, anything that comes before us, anything they want to put there has to still come before us. So you're still going to have a say on the other 15 acres that's sitting back there. You still have a say on those 2 acres.
No, we don't have a say on the 15 acres.
Well, they're still going to be residential.
Well, it's AAA.
Right.
They can develop it, consistent with the
Exactly.
regulations in AAA.
Exactly. So it's not like there's going to be a big shopping plaza going back there.
Most of the requirements, what are they gonna
They're going to add more traffic to the one thing. I mean, and this was the other thing that actually, that frankly bothered me about the application was that, leaving what we had been calling a hockey stick there to preserve their access way so that they can, develop the back parcel, not knowing what's going to be there, adding traffic to that intersection, which I already don't like, across the street from Barcelona and Idaho, which is in a state of flux. I mean, it's not easy. Yeah, Commissioner Barrett.
Yeah. This is actually about our rules, and again, you're arbitrary, Mr. Chairman, in terms that I know a little bit about Robert's rules, so this is how I see this going tonight. People have spoken, got some strong opinions. We got some people that, embarrassed to say after 3 meetings and stuff, we have 3 of us here that are sitting here and don't have strong opinions, have a lot of strong ideas floating through our heads, but for that, so. Mr. Kennelly made a motion to deny. That's not the typical motion. We usually make that on something that's a slam dunk because there's no way anybody can see it. We have mixed feelings on this, so probably would have been better to have a motion to approve for discussion. That aside, he made a motion to deny. My understanding is to that motion, if he gets 4 affirmative votes, then the application is denied. If he doesn't get 4 affirmative votes, meaning he gets something less than a majority, the application hasn't been decided. Just because it's not decided does not mean it's approved. It would still require a motion to approve or to table or something. So right now, unless Mr. Kennelly is willing to withdraw his motion, which I don't think he is, we have to vote on the motion.
We don't know that's correct.
Here's the thing.
Mhm.
I will withdraw my motion. Actually, look, I made the motion to deny because I thought it was for me at least, it was fairly straightforward. But before we close off this discussion, I just want to say that I noticed this, I've heard that, because you're going to have to reflect on this, and it seems like we're going to add more time, and I don't know. But two things. First, we do represent the community of Fairfield, and that's true. But we don't, but ultimately, I think none of us think that how many, you know, we don't look and take a vote as to who shows up to say yes or no. Ultimately, we have to kind of decide, we ultimately have to be lawmakers here and decide if we think it's a good idea to simply say, sure, 2 acres of commercial where there was an NDVD and there was a AAA. We have to decide if we think that's a fit, I mean, regardless of what the numbers are. That's one. The second thing is this is about comparing it to the Stratfield market. I've seen this in the newspapers and other stuff, okay, where people talk about this. They are two very different animals, okay? And I live in Stratfield. I live a half mile from there. And one of this I used to walk to that market. The market has its issues related to asbestos, to a lease that was worked out with Walgreens well before the recession, at a very high number per square foot. It has lived through, economically, one of the worst times in Fairfield since the 1930s. The plant factory is a run-down nursery. It's an empty, if somebody came through there and planted and took some stuff off of there, took some of the rundown old broken stuff, it would look like a nice empty field in Greenfield Hill. They're not the same things. Right now it doesn't. I agree with you. If someone took a little time with that land, if you've been up there, it would not be something hideous and unsightly and not out of character with the neighborhood. But the idea that these two things are equivalent doesn't seem to me to ring true. A thoughtful process where all stakeholders, where a group of stakeholders were involved, engaging the owner, and looking at whether the NDVD there could be used as something that could be valuable to the local community. I think that's the way to go. But I would say this, Mr. Chairman, if you and the other members here who feel strongly that review of the record and postponement is what you want, I'm absolutely happy with withdrawing my motion, and we can have a motion to table to a future date. So you let me know which one we'll do. I'll do it.
Anyone else have any comments on that?
That being said, I'm not going to vote to approve this tonight.
You what?
I will not be voting to approve this tonight. So I'm denying it, but I will not say I won't be denying it, but I will not voting to
Well, the
approve.
proposal on the table right now is that Mr. Pinelli will withdraw his motion.
On the second.
And that there would be a new motion to table the item, which would carry this on to our next agenda, which would be on April 14th. All right? And we've got plenty of time. I mean, the reason the statute gives us 65 days to decide it, while we normally decide matters 2 weeks later in our next session. It's not always the case. And we've tabled items from time to time where there are significant decisions that we need to make, where there are many factors that we need to consider, and where we're not all deciding on the issues. And so, you know, I would favor that at this point. I really would.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to withdraw my motion to deny this application.
Okay, Commissioner Kennelly has withdrawn his motion to deny. Do we have another motion?
I'll make a motion to table this item.
Motion to table by Commissioner Kennelly and seconded by Commissioner Alessi. Any further comment or discussion, debate on the motion to table?
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I mean, just the
Commissioner
motion
Barrett.
table is just so that we can just review the record. We're not going to hear any new evidence, and we'll make any
No,
discussions.
we can't.
It's just so we just
No, I
think
mean-
about what we heard. I don't think when we come back, we have to have another 45-minute discussion, but I think we can all, deliberate internally about what we heard tonight and review the records. So I think that would be a good opportunity for us, for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, just for clarity, I mean, there can be no new evidence. I mean, that's clear. And so, right. Any other comments on that? All right, are we ready to vote on the motion table? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion to table is carried unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, do you want a motion for the table the second item as well?
Would you call it first? Next item on the agenda is 4185 Blackrock Turnpike, special permit application of New Way Associates LLC pertaining to the construction of a medical office in the Design Commercial District. Public hearings February 10, 24, 2015 and March 10, 2015. So So in light of what's happened, I don't think we need staff's summary at this point, although,
You, Mr. Chairman.
can I have a motion?
Motion to table.
Motion to table by Commissioner Finale, seconded by Commissioner Alessi. Given what we've just done on the first item, any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion to table carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is compliances. 79 South Benson Road, application of Jason Kurtzman for a revised sign plan in the design commercial district.
Okay. This application was tabled at your last meeting. We went back, took a look, and the issue, the primary issue that was raised was a concern about the sight line exiting the driveway. We went up and took a look, and submitted to you in your packet some photos, kind of show the situation out here. As it turns out, the sight line to the left is actually the worst of the sight lines. So as you have to advance your vehicle exiting the driveway, so you can see to the left, you've got an unobstructed view to the right. So it's our opinion anyway that the sight line is not impacted by this particular proposal. That was the question that was raised to the west.
Thank you. Motion to approve by Commissioner Alessi. Second by Commissioner Jacobs. Discussion? No discussion? All right. I mean, it was helpful. We appreciate the diligence. We ready to vote? Motion is to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Next item is 414 Kings Highway, application of Heather Dudko for an overall sign plan in the design commercial district.
Okay, this is a new proposal for a comprehensive sign plan for the Walgreens that's nearing completion at the corner of Kings Highway and Jennings Road. There are 2 wall signs proposed, each a set of channel letters and 1 monument sign being proposed. It is not illuminated. There is a request to have that setback of that sign be less than the required 25 feet. It's approximately 16 feet from one property line and 22 from the other, less than 25 feet. However, in viewing this in light of the South Benson Road application, we looked at that as well, that it does not interfere with the sight line there. As a matter of fact, that's Jennings Road and Kings Highway is a signalized intersection that prohibits a right turn on red. The sight line, although it's not obstructing the sight line, it is a signalized intersection with no ability to turn right on red. So what you have before you is a monument sign in the parking lot island and 2 channel letter signs. With the exception of the request for the reduction of the setback fully complies with the regulations.
And that, just so that everybody's clear, there's 1 blow up in the packet. Right?
Yes, they show you the big picture, and then they kind of zoom in to that location to show you its position.
And so on the corner there, I don't know if anybody's been announced. Well, we don't have a motion on the table. Motion to approve by Commissioner Alessi.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Barron.
I'm just gonna say, I don't mind the sign on the wall, but I have a problem with the monument sign where it is. We have a setback, it doesn't meet a setback regulation, so I would approve it without a change.
So, you want to revise your motion?
Yeah, I'm making a
approve-
motion to approve with the exception of the monument sign.
Commissioner
So
Barron?
is that going to approve the wall signs and deny the monument signs?
Correct.
That's approved.
Correct, yes.
So it's that proven part that I.
Besides, that building is so close to the road that everyone's gonna have to walk right there.
Okay, we'll discuss that in a second.
I'll go on.
All right, so the motion's been amended by Commissioner Alessi to approve in part all accept the monument sign, to deny the monument sign for failing to meet the setbacks. And that's been accepted by Commissioner Barrett as a secondary. So, has anybody, I mean, I've driven back past this project in construction, I don't know, 50 times in the last 2 weeks. And right there is, there's steps and things, it's, you know, it's sort of on that rise, on that corner. So it's actually kind of a little bit elevated from where the sidewalk, from, you know, from the roadway there. I do agree, though, that, you know, our setbacks and regulations are there for purpose. And it is really close to the road. And you're not gonna miss that it's a walk. Sir, anyone else? Mr. Barrett?
Yes, sir. I mean, is there an opportunity for them to move the money? I mean, this is just what the narrative says, and I agree with Commissioner. There should be some justification for why it needs to be closer to the road.
Other than that's where their island is, they've got other islands further into the parking lot that they could consider. Or perhaps a smaller version of the sign that might be able to, it's just for, it's for,
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's been, I mean, I'm happy with the building, I've driven by it, I'm happy that it's being developed, I'm happy that it's going up, I have no issue with their sign plan, but just, you know, something that's, not conforming there, I'd rather see something that they conform.
Exactly.
That's all.
For no other reason, other than they just didn't put it in the right place, you know, or, you know, didn't explain it.
Right, I mean, there are situations down in that area where they, you know, they actually physically can't conform, there's, you know, various things where we approve that, but I don't think this is one. I don't think the Congress Drive area has a lot of those non-conforming signs, just think, you know, the building is closer than that or something, so. Yeah, right, well, it needs some.
GMO, man, they can make streets.
What do I support?
Mr. Lesson's proposed.
Okay, all right. Anyone else? Comments? You ready to vote? All right. Motion is to approve in part all of the signs except for the monument sign, which would be denied. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion as made passes unanimously. Next item is 3546 Post Road application of Riccio Connecticut Realty LLC for a change in a portion of the existing building from retail and food service in the design commercial district.
Okay, this building is on the corner of Post Road and Hulls Highway. Presently has a deli in half the building, the other half is an interior design retail store. The applicant seeks to convert the building entirely to take out food operation as outlined in their detailed statement of use. The parking for takeout is the same as it is for retail, so there's no increase pursuant to our regulations. It is presently non-conforming with respect to the number of spaces on site. It will remain so because we want to increase that non-conformity, and they are proposing to enhance the interior store.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a motion. Motion to approve by Commissioner Jacobson and seconded by Commissioner Coleman. Anyone want to start? Commissioner Coleman? No?
Don't see any reason to disapprove the application, so I approve it.
All right, very good. You know, I think it's a great application. I mean, it's a great repurposed use for the space. And I also thank the applicant for the detailed statement of use, which is very helpful. Anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, I'm also happy, I'm also happy about the exterior upgrade too. I mean, this is a building that could use some upgrading, and I'm fine with the statement of use. Again, there's no reason I can see to deny it. I'm actually, you know, happy that the building interior and exterior will be significantly upgraded to the side.
We ready to vote? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? Passes unanimously. Next item is 65 Hillside Road, application of Patrick Visciagna. Did I pronounce it correct?
Yes, sir.
Visciagna, to establish a package store in a portion of an existing building in the neighborhood design district.
Okay. This applicant currently operates a retail liquor shop that is at 75 Hillside Road, looking to relocate to the adjacent parcel that has a different owner. You have the site plan there. That building you may be familiar with is the home of Greenfield Dry Cleaner, and there was previously a hair salon where this location is. It is a permitted use zone, use from one parcel to the other. There are no exterior changes proposed.
Thank you. Now, motion to approve by Commissioner Coleman, second by Commissioner Alessi. Mr. Coleman?
There are no exterior changes as approved use. I don't think there's a real big
Thank you. Anyone else? No? This is a good application. Detailed plans, there's no, as you say, Commissioner Coleman, no reason to deny. I think you should support this. Anyone else? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? Carries unanimously. Next item is public hearing. We need a minute. Why don't we take 5-minute break? Okay? Request of Attorney Allen Inspired for 100% release of the $26,310 bond pertaining to subdivision improvements in a double A zone.
Good evening. My name is Alan Spirer. I'm a lawyer. I practice in Westport, and I'm here tonight representing Ronald and Lucy Woolsey, who are making this request. This is a very straightforward request with an unusual backstory. So let me give you the request. I'll tell you the backstory, and we can kind of cut to the central issue, which is how straightforward this really is. The request is, have the reasons for which the bond was posted to the subdivision been satisfied? If they had, then the bond should be released. As I understand it from the staff, there's no reason to retain the bond. The subdivision is in place, improvements are in place, the bond should be released. Now let me tell you the backstory, because that makes it interesting. My clients were involved in litigation with Hollydale Associates. Superior Court has entered a judgment in favor of my clients against Hollydale Associates. Since the judgment remained unsatisfied, we went to court and we got an order in aid of execution from the court. What that order says, it's been served on the town. Town attorney knows all about it. We've had numerous conversations and served by a marshal so that this order is in place and controls what happens ultimately to this money. What the order says is, when this bond is ready to be released, it's to be turned over to my clients as opposed to Hollydale Associates, since Hollydale Associates is a judgment creditor and my clients have an unsatisfied, or a judgment debtor and my clients are, as a judgment creditor, have an unsatisfied judgment. Let me read to you the specific portion of the order from the court that relates to what we're doing tonight. The court writes, now therefore it is hereby ordered that if and when the town of Fairfield and the town plan and zoning commission of the town of Fairfield are prepared to release the bond posted by the judgment debtor Hollydale Associates LLC, that the town of Fairfield and the town plan and zoning commission of the town of Fairfield transfer to the levying officer, that's the marshal who served the bond, the funds. And it recites specifically the $26,000 bond that this commission is being asked to release tonight. For reasons that I can only guess, Hollydale Associates doesn't want the bond released. They'd rather see the town keep it than my clients get it. To say that there are a lot of hard feelings in connection with this litigation is probably an understatement. But the fact of the matter is, that Hollydale's objections make no sense. They say that my client doesn't have standing to make this request, that it is unusual for me to make the request. Yes, it is unusual, but my clients have standing. What standing means in legal terms is the ability to set a judicial process in motion, or a process before this commission in motion. It means that the person that's asserting the claim has to have a sufficient interest in the outcome to be able to come before the commission. Well, clearly, my clients, by virtue of their judgment and by virtue of this order of execution, have standing. That's why we're here. We're here because we want the money. There is really no reason for this commission not to release the bond unless the staff says there's work to be done on the subdivision, where there's an improvement that's yet to be made, where the conditions for release, as set forth in the subdivision approval, haven't been satisfied. That's not the case.
Question.
But, yes.
Were the claims in the case, Woolsey versus Hollydale, related to the subdivision and the development that about which the bond was posted?
No. They were related to defects in the construction of the new home.
Separate property, unrelated to the bond?
Well, the property is part of the subdivision. So it didn't relate to the subdivision improvements. There's no complaint about the subdivision improvements. There were complaints that certain items of construction were improperly done, that certain items weren't finished. The case went to arbitration. The arbitrator ruled in favor of my clients. We went to court. The judgment was entered based on the arbitration, the amount of $40,000 approximately. It's unsatisfied. The only asset of Hollydale is the bond. So hence our interest in receiving the funds and at least partial satisfaction of the judgment that's been entered. You're going to get a lot of rhetoric from that. Here's my, in a moment, not only from me, from Mr. Clark that's in the audience. Let me make a suggestion. We're going to come back to the main issue, or the only issue before you. The only issue before you is, have the reasons for which the bond was posted been satisfied? If you believe that they have been, and you are inclined to release the bond, rather than submit to all of the rhetoric and possible threats that you're going to hear, my suggestion is send the money to the town attorney. He'll know what to do with it. He's well aware of what's going on. Prepared to answer your questions.
Anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you. Does anyone wish to be heard on this application? Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Scott Kilcorn. I actually own the property at 355. So they subdivided the property. What they're speaking on is 295. I own the house at 355. I was notified that there was some structural issues with the retaining walls that actually are partially on my property. There's an easement that was given to 295 when they subdivided the 5 acres, and there was an easement granted to put the driveway down at the very corner through my property. So I spoke with Mr. Woosley maybe almost 2 years ago about what was going on. He assured me they were taking care of it. And then he up and put the house up for sale and moved. So I wrote this letter to actually you guys, which I was very surprised.
You just hand that to
Which I was very surprised not to hear from anybody. I asked about what was going on with the structural components of the walls. Were there any things I needed to be notified about? Was there any work that was going to be done on my property? And I never got any notice. I even actually asked to be notified when this hearing was, because I want to make sure that before you guys released the bond, that I had some assurance that was an engineer looked at it, like I don't want something happening on my property that could adversely affect me. And I didn't hear anything. And so thank God I found out about this meeting, because this is, obviously you're making a decision on this tonight. So
we won't be deciding this tonight. This is the public hearing.
Okay.
It then gets placed on our next executive session, which will be at the next regular meeting. It's April 14th, where we'll have, you heard us consider some of the other items earlier before the public hearing.
Yeah.
We will likely decide it then, but we might not. We might table it and so forth.
Okay.
But we certainly have a time period in which it needs to be decided.
Okay. Well, so obviously my concern is, before the bond gets released, has whatever problems that were looked at been fixed? I live and work right out of that residence, so I drive by, coming out of my house, I look down on that driveway, so I know there's been work done. I haven't seen the work being done. I also am concerned that, if it hasn't been done, my driveway actually sits right above it. So if there is something wrong and it doesn't retain what it's supposed to be retaining, is it going to, affect my driveway?
Normally we don't ask members of the public in these circumstances questions and such, but you own 355. I mean, that's the item.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
so I'm going to ask you a couple questions.
sure, have that.
Does it appear to you as if there is unfinished work?
No, the work, and that's the thing, it was done, so before Ron owned the house, the builder had finished the property and sold it as a spec house to Ron.
Yeah.
And it all seemed to be 100% done. So that's why I had a question, because it's never been touched since the house was sold, and it still hasn't been touched, and then I found out that there's supposedly structural components that are bad.
So that was my next question. What's the basis of your belief that there are some issues?
Well, so I had, being friendly with Ron, he was the one that brought up that, there were issues with the walls and he was going to look into it. So therefore that put that in the back of my head saying, I should keep track on what's going on. Now I had also met the builder because before Ron bought the house, Greg, who was the builder, was actually, I needed to get onto my property because my driveway was accessible when the construction on that driveway was not. And I let them use my driveway to make some electrical connections because the electrical pole is right on our property line, but very accessible from my driveway. So I met him, and so I knew something was going on about the structural walls that were technically on my property. But then Ron left. I haven't seen Greg in years since he sold the house, and now I'm here.
Other than that, I mean, you're not, you don't have an engineer that says that there are structural problems, or you don't see any issues, it's not falling down?
No, nothing to me seems to be out of order, but I
It
just,
looks like anything needs to be done.
no, but again, hearing stuff like that, you don't want to have an issue later after the bond's been released, and then have someone say, now you gotta fix this wall. So I'm, concerned that, someone's gotta have looked at it, out of all this, from what I understand, lawsuit here, someone's got to have been in there and looked at it, but I haven't heard anything from the town of Fairfield. Nothing from zoning, nothing from any structural engineers, nothing. And that letter that I sent out was last November 15th of 2014.
We do have, just so that you know, we do have the town engineer, who has indicated that all of the work has been completed, and she recommends 100% release of the bond. So there is an engineer, to your point, who, the town, who did look at it at one point. Okay. Anyone else have any? No?
Great, thank you very much.
Fine. Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to be heard on this application?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Mark Clark, I represent Holiday Associates. Mr. Spire and I disagree on a lot of things, but I do agree that this is a very simple matter. You pointed out that the issues with the homeowner didn't include the bond, didn't cover the bond. When you were speaking with Mr. Spire, that was a dispute over any of the matters that were with the bond, and they weren't. And in fact, Ms. Cooley's letter to the commission about a full release was from our application to release the bond. And yet, the commission denied the release of the bond 5 years ago. And Mr. Wendt sent a letter to Attorney Ambrose saying, hey, it was denied. When you make the repairs, you can reapply.
What repairs?
I don't know. They were outlined, there were some concerns about some of the, On Tuesday, October 10th, 26, 2010, the Town Planning and Zoning Commission voted to deny the request for bond release for the above captioned property due to unresolved concerns about certain site work on the property. You can resubmit a request for release once the work is completed. It doesn't say that Mr. Spire, his client, can submit a request. There's no argument about when the bond is released that his client may be entitled to it. But that order does not say that Mr. Spire or his client can step into my client's shoes and apply for the release of the bond. As Mr. White told me, this has never happened before in his recollection. I certainly don't know of anyone. I've asked a million people about this. Third parties don't have standing to pursue the release of a performance bond. There's plenty of case law on that. And more importantly, Mr. Spire talked about right. I'm not going to waste the commission's time about that. But it's interesting. Mr. Wendt sends a letter to Attorney Ambrose saying it was denied based on some concerns about site improvements. And then, 2 years ago, he testifies under oath in my letter to the commission that basically the commission denied the release because they were trying to help Mr. Woolsey get some satisfaction. Mr. Spire and the Woolseys don't have standing to bring this application. That's the bottom line. It's simple. They don't own the property, and neither of them are an agent of Hollywood Associates.
What do our regulations say with respect to who can
It
request?
says just a written request. But the problem with the regulations is the regulations can't contemplate a third party. These are legal arguments that I've tried to talk to Attorney Lester about. You can't contemplate a third party because a third party can't be aggrieved. If you deny this appeal, if you deny this release, and Attorney Spire appeals, he can't prove he's aggrieved in the Superior Court. He doesn't own the property. He has no interest in the bond. The only interest in the bond is Hollydale Associates and the town of Fairfield until it's released.
The order from the Superior Court gives him an interest in the bond.
When it's released,
Well,
it does. It says if and when. It does not say.
Commissioner Lester.
We have a request to release a bond.
Correct.
Our town engineer sent us a letter saying she's inspected the Barbaristan site. All work is not complete, and she recommends the bond be released. Why shouldn't this body just release the bond on recommendation of the town engineer?
What would prevent every bond that the town is holding for third parties from coming in and requesting?
That has nothing to do with this body.
Well, what difference?
If the work has been done and the work has been completed, and our town engineer, official of this town, says it has been done, I suggest you release it, and we rely on her recommendation almost all the time. Why don't we just release it? It's not hard.
Well, first of all, my review of the file says that there's no designation on any of the final plans that Mr. Woolsey filed, because my client certainly didn't file them, that shows the drainage, that shows the infiltrators, that shows all the requirements of the subdivision. None of that stuff's in it. That's a requirement from the application. That's a requirement to finish the bond. That's not in the file.
Thanks very much. Obviously, this is very different than the normal.
Well, he's an attorney.
He's an attorney speaking out. So just so I can understand the broad outlines, I'm sorry I'm a little slow on this, but I'm trying to understand. There's a judgment against your client that was in place for $40,000.
Correct.
And you are fighting so that $26,000 of that isn't paid to these folks through this bond. Okay, so you want Hollydale to get the $26,000?
No, I don't know. Hollydale has not made an application
Right.
to release the bond.
So they're holding
Hollydale
on.
finishes the drawings
Right.
and submits the application, and the bond is released, then he has his execution come to the court.
Well, but
When Jim's done.
Yeah.
No, you're good.
Thank you.
Um,
You finished?
Yeah.
30 minutes. Commissioner, forgive me.
Are you denying that should the bond be released? Is there a reason the bond should not be released?
Yes, because my client is the only one who can apply for the
In
release.
order to stand apart,
Substantively.
substantively, thank
Yeah,
you.
the drawings are incomplete. The only one, the person who put in the drainage hasn't even consulted with the surveyor who submitted the quote-unquote final map on my client's behalf.
Do you have any of that stuff? Any of the evidence that,
I don't personally have it, no, but it's not in your file, and that's a requirement.
well, you're objecting to it though?
I'm objecting to this purported application. I don't think you can hear it. I'm objecting to it because he has no standing to bring it.
So you just want the town to keep the money?
Until my client applies for it, you guys are sitting on bonds from 1978.
So, what efforts has your client taken in the last 5 years to complete the work and seek release of funds?
That's beyond the purview of the commission at this point.
I mean, you've raised the former denial. You have mentioned that you believe only your clients can seek release of the bond.
Correct.
What has your client done? And we have a statement from our town engineer saying that all the work is done and the bond should be released. And yet, you're not telling us what work is still remains to be required, or what your client has done, or planning to do, or
My client hasn't done anything, because since the time the town engineer recommended a full release of the bond, the very letter in which he relied, nothing has changed with the subdivision.
I have a question for staff while you're talking, Chair.
No, okay.
Right there, there's a question for staff. There wasn't, just trying to get the timeline and chronology here. We have an unprecedented letter from Laura Poole, not unprecedented that she recommends bond release, and she's very thorough about the work, which she recommends 100%. It's dated June 3rd, 2010. Was there a bond release application subsequent to this letter? Get the microphone. I was here, but I don't remember the whole history. So maybe you could just help us out with this. Somebody that's not an attorney.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
In fact,
We're changing the text.
It's good.
There is, the request that you're hearing tonight is the only request to release the bond subsequent to 2010. What has changed since 2010 denial, it is true.
When was the denial?
It was
October
we just-
26th.
Thank you.
Right.
October of 2010, subsequent to Laura's recommendation. The reason that the bond was not released is at the hearing for that release, Mr. Woolsey, the then owner of the new house, appeared and raised some concerns about the lack of a building permit for certain retaining walls on the property, and a lack of an engineering report that the previous speaker alluded to. Subsequent to that, I couldn't tell you the exact dates, but an engineering plan and study has been submitted to the satisfaction of the building official such that building permits were issued for those walls. That was the crux of the reason why the bond was not released in 2010. That is no longer an issue, and that is what has changed between then and now.
and those are in the file.
They're in the building permit file. They're not in our file. Those were building permits that were filed, and the then owner objected to the bond release for the lack of, for that outstanding issue, and that is why the commission did not release the bond at that
Who
point.
was the applicant on the bond release? Hollydale
It was Holiday Associates. that's
Okay,
right.
so Hollydale Associates has, I'm just asking you these questions, has applied for a bond release. They
Yeah.
did, it was denied,
Correct.
based upon concerns about the retaining wall from Mr. Woolsey. And those concerns, we believe from the notes, we should say to the building department, those concerns have been addressed.
That's correct.
Because we were representing that to Mr. Kilcoyne about that,
Right.
those concerns were subsequent to their town engineer's report.
That's correct.
It's on our plan.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the facts.
And thanks for the clarification.
So the bottom line is this. We applied or denied. He can't apply. There's a new owner in the house. Perhaps they're gonna let him. Mr. Woolsey had security cameras in the house, and Mr. Spire sent my client a new letter saying, don't go near the house. There's a new owner in the house. Perhaps my client can maybe wrap it up, but the bottom line is, well, it finished the application, but the problem is, he can't apply. That's the bottom line. He doesn't have standing to be before the commission to request the release of the bond. The court order does not confer on him the ability to stand in my client's shoes and request the release of the bond.
Okay, but it's an interesting argument. I don't, and I'll agree with you that the court order does not say that he can request release of the bond, but the court order doesn't have to do that. The regulation simply enables an application to be filed by a person.
Correct.
Does not specify that that person or entity is the bond holder.
Correct, but in essence, he's filing on our behalf because the bond is,
Are you confused, the court didn't transfer or assign or subrogate, you're asking more of a standing issue.
he has no standing. It's definitely didn't assign to him.
Well, definitely didn't assign it or subrogate it, but standing is a little different where you have an interest in the bond, and the court gave them interest.
No, it did not give them interest, it would get in the proceeds from the bond. The bond is for the benefit of the town and the taxpayers of the town to ensure that the subdivision is
And
compliant.
the town says that it should be released.
The town,
We have the accounting sheet that says all the work's been done. We've got staff from town planning and zoning saying that our file is complete and should be released, recommended. We have our staff that has checked with the building department and has confirmed that the walls have been inspected and that the certificates of permits have been granted, and that as far as our staff is telling us that having done their due diligence, that all of the regulations have been complied with, and that the money should be released. So in that instance, why would your client not want that money released?
because he hasn't applied for it.
But that's not an
Definitely an answer. It absolutely is an answer. It's the core of
Substantively, why wouldn't your client want the money released?
because he doesn't have to.
You don't want someone else to get the money.
But that's beyond the commission's.
That's
No,
what
I'm not
we're
saying
going
that.
in circles here.
No, we're not
For
going
no
on.
reason.
That's not the commission's problem, why he does or doesn't want to release. That's beyond, and that's.
It is.
It is.
It's not.
That's why you're here tonight, because you don't want them to get the money. Why don't you just say that it's not going around in circles?
I'm not going around in circles. I am here tonight because someone who has applied for a release of my client's funds that doesn't have the ability to do so.
Or not your client's funds.
It is my client's funds. And it's an account with my client's name on it and yours, and there's someone's name.
I just want one question for you.
Sure.
Mr. Clark, where would I find it in my regulations, in the fair field or in the state statute, that I can't release a bond? Can't. And you said this could open, you said in the letter we received, this could open a floodgate of people who didn't, your third parties just asking for bonds. If a floodgate could be opened, it would seem that I didn't believe it was going to be a floodgate, but it could be a teeny tiny little opening of the door, I could do it. Where does it say in the regs, I can't vote for this release to the party that's being presented to me with the apparent blessing of my town attorney? Where is it? Where does it say you can't do it? Just show me so I can.
It doesn't say in your regs you can't release it because your regs don't take into consideration third parties because they can't. A third party can't be agreed. In theory, okay, we could spend all day talking about this stuff.
No.
Everybody's right, exactly. But the bottom line is this. If this commission denies the release of bond, an attorney's file goes to
I know, he can't go to Superior
No, he
Court.
can, he absolutely can, right?
He's an
Mr.
agreed
Lesser-
party at that point,
How is he an agreed party?
because he has an interest in the proceeds of the bond, and a bond otherwise
It doesn't have, the court hasn't conferred him an interest in the proceeds of the bond.
It
It's
certainly
confirmed
has.
that
No
when they're
proceeds, an
released-
interest in the proceeds of the bond
Okay.
by court order.
When it's released is when he gets right, not now.
And everything that we have heard from our staff and from the file and the regulations, all say specifically, all work's been done and the bond should be released.
Mhm.
So what I'm struggling with is a very simple and direct answer from you on behalf of your client as to why the bond shouldn't be released by this body, inasmuch as all of the work has been done, and there is no reason under our regulations for us to continue to hold the bond.
You do not have complete information in your file regarding the subdivision.
What information?
Your maps don't reference where the drainage is, where the infiltrators are, all the other requirements of the subdivision. It's impossible. There's no way he could have filed those, because he doesn't know where they are.
Mr. Clark, could I ask you something? If we release the bond to this third party, and you are correct, that they don't have standing, and that they shouldn't receive those funds, won't you be able to then get satisfaction in the courts to get that money right back?
I would, and I think that
So
would.
won't you be better to maybe take this case to the courts and
No,
allow us to do our
I
work?
disagree. I would disagree.
Why would it be difficult? In fact, if you say it's such a, if you think it's such a slam dunk case that they can't receive these funds, it would seem a very quick trip to the courthouse to get them right back.
I think it's a very interesting case.
I don't know if that, interesting. No, a moment ago it seemed, in your letter, you made it pretty clear it was black and white, not interesting. Interesting is gray. I'm saying if you have an absolute slam dunk of a case that we can't do this, then you'll just go down to the courthouse and collect those funds right back because this road commission did that. But if there isn't, and you can't point, it appears to me, you can't point to something in our regulations. You say it's never conceived of or whatever, but you don't have anything in the regs to say that we can't do this. I would just head on to the courts. You know, we have an administrative duty to perform as well.
Well, either that or we could do this to the clerk, and then we could like fight about it there.
That's fine, and first and foremost, listen, I appreciate the data commission, it's not an easy task at hand. But the bottom line is, there's a long and storied history of on this file, dating back to that very request to release the bonds in 2010, which was denied. Okay? And
But we've been told that any defect at that time has been cured.
there wasn't a defect at the time, that's the problem. And you didn't release it. And
We didn't
Mr.
release
West
it because,
testified, and
no,
Mr. West testified-
what we've been told by our staff after they had done their diligence on the file is that at the time there was concern about the retaining walls not having been inspected and for which there was no permit having been issued. And that after that occurred, they were inspected and permits were issued. And so the problem was cured, and now that there is no further impediment to the release of the bond.
all of which were outside the scope of the bond hearing at the time. The retaining walls, building permits had nothing to do with the subdivision. Then the bond was denied, and then Mr. White testified that the only reason that the commission denied the bond, now he's not a member of the commission, but I'm just telling you what he testified, and I included it. The only reason the bond was denied was the commission was trying to give a homeowner leverage in a private
He
affair.
didn't say that.
Well, he alluded to that.
I saw your quote, and
It
the
speaks for itself.
deposition is a larger.
The words speak for themselves.
But
And the bottom line is, so here we are, 5 years later, and it appears to my client that we're in the same situation again. My client applies for the bond to be released, and the application is finished, and the infiltrators are shown, and all the drawings are correct. When the bond is released, at that very moment, his client has an interest in it. But he doesn't have an interest in it right now. And he can't force the commission to bring it. Nothing in that gives him the ability to stand in my
So
client.
you think that there are incomplete maps and that something needs to be filed showing infiltrating?
Amongst other things, I'm sure there are.
When is your client gonna do that?
I have no idea.
We just should take your word for it.
No, you shouldn't, and I'm not saying that. I mean, this is a,
Yeah, Mr. Nguyen, are there maps that are incomplete, not showing infiltrators?
Not to our knowledge. I don't know whether he has infiltrators on it or not, but most of the time they do not. They're normally inspected by the engineering staff before the backfill, so they're visually inspected prior to them being covered. That's not what I wanted to say. He alluded to quoting me in the context of some deposition that was taken several years ago. I'm not denying that the quote he's saying is accurate, but I know that I don't need to tell this to the chair, but I'm sure that is one snippet of soundbite out of a probably 300-page document that I haven't seen in 5 years, so.
No, that's why I challenged the characterization of the quote and recognize that the quote is of a larger document. And the quote that you referenced in your papers.
we have to provide the entire transcript to the commission. And this is.
I can't prevent you from doing whatever you're gonna do, but I'm not asking for it. Does anybody else have any questions? Do you have
Thank you for your
anything
time.
further?
No, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to be heard on this application? Spire, you're on for rebuttal if you'd like.
Very, very briefly. I think the commission has explored the issues more than adequately. We're talking about subdivision improvements that have been in place for a period of time. What I didn't hear tonight was any complaint that those improvements aren't functioning properly and haven't been completed to the satisfaction of everybody who is using that subdivision and it has the benefit of it. That's the one thing I didn't hear. So obviously, these subdivision improvements are not only in place, but they've withstood the test of time, and it's time to release the bond. I think this commission has a real handle on what's going on here, but to the extent there are any questions about all the legal sophistry that you've heard tonight, I suggest you ask the town attorney for advice if necessary. I don't know that it will be.
No, we have, and we have, and there is a note in our file with respect to an who may apply for a relief.
Thank you. And I assume you have a copy of the court order in your file if you want to look at it?
Okay. And we did, yes, the court order is a part of our file as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'll close the public hearing on Saturday. Next is 732, 742 Kings Highway West, special permit application of, is it Averco or AVERCO? Avreco LLC pertaining to an addition to an existing building in an uncommercial zone. Thank you for your patience.
I always learn something.
Room cleared out.
I learn a great deal at these meetings.
What happened?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, for the record, my name is Bill Fitzpatrick, and I'm an attorney in Fairfield with the law firm of Fitzpatrick, Frey, and Bologna. I'm here this evening representing the owner of the property in question on Kings Highway West, which is Avreco LLC. The principal of Avreco LLC is Dr. Todd Bloom, who has a dental surgery practice here in Fairfield. As the owner of the property, my client has the standing to file this application. The property in question consists of 4 commercial buildings, the middle 2 of which are connected, located on the northerly side of Kings Highway West, essentially opposite Center Street. This property is located in the Design Commercial District, contains 24,680 square feet, and as you know, the minimum lot requirement in the DCD is 10,000 square feet. The intent of the applicant is to construct a 1-story addition to the west or left-hand side as you look from the street of the connected building. Dr. Bloom plans to move his dental surgery practice to this building. The needs of a dental surgery practice do not lend themselves to up and down. They need to be on 1 story. As a result, with this addition in place, Dr. Bloom's needs to be accommodated on the 1st floor of the building. As a result, we're here before you requesting special permit approval for construction of the proposed 1-story addition. At this point, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce Mr. Jack Franzen of the noted Fairfield architectural firm of J.P. Franzen Associates Architects PC to discuss the proposed addition. Jack.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Jack Franzen. I'm here to explain the architectural proposal for this application. As Attorney Fitzpatrick said, the request is for a 1-story addition on the second of the most westerly buildings. This grouping consists of 4 buildings. 3 of them were extensively renovated by the previous owner not too long ago, and our firm did the renovations. It's our intention to also renovate the 4th building, which is the most easterly building. And bring it up to consistency with siding, trim, paint, and what have you of the other 3 buildings. Specifically, tonight the application relates to that second building, and we are proposing a 14.5 foot by 30.5 foot 1-story addition, which basically would be you try to build a. Put that board on this thing. Or just put it right in front. Right on top of it.
Let's make sure it doesn't block the camera.
Down.
Yeah.
Down the floor.
On the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That work for you?
Yeah. So anyway, I was explaining the addition. The addition's 14.5 feet by 30.5 feet. So if you were to build a wall around this table, this group of tables, that's about how big the addition is. Also, behind the addition, there's a stair that provides a proposed stair that's going to provide a second means of egress for the upstairs tenant and parking lot access for Dr. Bloom. Disabled access will be by means of the existing ramp on the connector part of the buildings, and it will come into the side of our addition. Here on the easel I can show you the proposed addition, and also from the side you can see the new door, which is where the handicap ramp will get you to if you make a right turn after reaching the top of the ramp. As Attorney Fitzpatrick explained, is The reason for the addition is to provide sufficient space, all on one level, for the specialized practice that Dr. Bloom has. Since the existing building is very small to start with, it's only about 1,120 square feet on the ground floor. And I mentioned before in other applications how on the post road there aren't very many of these sections left where you have these small residential structures that still have that residential character, and yet they can convert it to business. And that's sort of what gives the post road its character. It's not all big boxes and so forth. You have the strip across from the French bakery. You have this strip, and it's a beautiful little piece, and we want to preserve it. In conjunction with this addition, we're also proposing some renovations to the parking area. The parking area will be connected to the fourth building. There'll be a driveway connecting the two lots, and there'll be 3 accessible spaces. And there'll also be 4 bike racks, which are hard to see here, but the bike racks are going to go on this little peninsula here. The landscaping plan that we're proposing is going to have 6 pin oaks, 2 paper birches, 3 red buds, 2 dogwoods, and 1 snowbell tree. Those are located on that site plan in front of you. In addition, the grounds will be extensively planted with grasses, evergreen shrubs, and perennials. And also, it should be noted that there are 5 pretty good-sized trees that exist on actually the neighbor's property, but they're inaccessible to the neighbor. There are these trees right here, and they are actually behind the parking structure of the neighbor's building, and they've always been maintained by the owner of this property, and we tend to keep them and maintain them. And I think it's a very nice application. I don't think you're going to notice very much difference, except that that fourth building will look a lot like the other 3. And this is a rendering that we did, a 3D rendering showing this is the proposed addition here.
Can you pan that out or something?
Pass it around.
Yeah, pass it around. Pass this around. And then this is the whole grouping when everything's done. And with that, I will turn it back to Attorney Fitzpatrick. That's the addition, yes.
In your professional opinion, Mr. Francis, do you think neighbors will embrace this?
I think they will.
They'll see it as a keeping with the character.
I think they're going to like it a lot.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'd like to conclude no inland wetlands on this property, so there's no inland wetland approval. The drainage report was prepared by the project engineers, Chapa and Paolini Engineers LLC of Bridgeport. Your file contains the response of Laura Pulley of the Town Engineering Department. I'd like to quote from her response. Quote, I have reviewed the drainage computations for the proposed building addition and parking lot improvements at 732 and 742 Kings Highway West. The drainage report is dated February 2nd, 2015, and prepared by Chapa and Paolini, consulting engineers and site planners. The report indicates that stormwater attenuation is being provided for storms up to the 100-year storm event for the additional impervious surface created. In addition, the applicant has provided stormwater attenuation for the existing developed site that will also provide additional groundwater recharge for water quality improvements to runoff leaving the site. A hydrodynamic separator is also proposed. The drainage design is therefore acceptable. End quote. You note we're doing catch-up work. Not only are we handling the water from the addition, we're handling water from the existing parking lot and cleaning it with the vortechnics. The proposed addition did require a variance of the street line setback to Kings Highway from the required 25 feet, presently 7 feet to 14.1 feet. That's a function of the fact that the building was constructed in 1905, prior to the implementation of zoning in 1925. I'd like to submit a copy for the record of this ZBA approval, if I might. sections of the zoning regs are satisfied by the proposal before you. It's a permitted use in the design commercial district satisfying 2571. Site plans and architectural plans have been submitted satisfying 2572 and 2573. Parking on site satisfies the relevant requirements under the regs, satisfying 2574. In terms of 2577, the proposed use is consistent with the existing uses in the immediate area. I think Jack's design is both efficient and attractive, enhancing the appearance of the area. Dr. Bloom's practice is a dental surgery practice, meaning he can only perform surgery on one patient at a time. He does a lot of wisdom teeth, and each appointment takes a relatively lengthy period of time. The end result is a low volume of traffic for this dental surgery practice. There's no overbuilding on the site. Proposed coverage is 23.7, less than 1/3 of the permitted coverage of 75%. FAR is 34.2, less than 1/4 of the permitted FAR of 150%. Lastly, I think it's important for the Commission to recognize that the applicant here will be an owner of this property. As an owner, Dr. Bloom has a pride of ownership, generally results in a higher standard of care and maintenance than non-owner occupied properties. I think part of the evidence of his pride of ownership is that proposed landscaping plan, 40 trees, more than 80 shrubs, plus perennials. Approval of this special permit application for this relatively minor addition of 440 square feet permits an existing dental practice to continue here in Fairfield in a carefully designed addition consistent with the existing streetscape. Dr. Bloom and his wife Kristen are here with me today, and they and I and Jack Franzen will be pleased to answer any questions. Approval by the Commission as quickly as possible would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? Commissioner Coleman.
First, I applaud your efforts to preserve the streetscape there. I know which buildings you're talking about. They look nice now, and I'm sure that they'll continue to look like what you're proposing. Regarding the landscape plan, you said that you were going to put in cercis, styrax, and dogwood, I think, were the three. Those are really pretty ornamental trees, but they're small. Do you know that the town has specific requirements for parking lot trees that are going to provide shade to the parking area? Those three don't sound like they would do it.
Yes, the dogwoods are actually closer to the building. The pin oaks are the ones that are in the parking field. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I thought you said like snowbell or something like that.
Yeah,
but
they're actually, I mentioned some additional trees to the ones that are in the parking field, and those are the smaller ones, the snowbell and the dogwoods. The pin oaks are actually, if you look at the plan.
These are the pin oaks here, here, and here. It's this grouping, these two, and that one there. And then these are the kind of bonus trees that we don't own, but we like them.
I didn't catch the pin oaks, thank you.
Thank you.
But in your opinion, it complies with our the regulations regarding
Yes.
trees and parking areas?
Yes.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to,
Len?
sorry, Mr. I just wanted to raise one issue. Mr. Franzen, I think, touched on it briefly, but I just want to make sure while the applicant is here during the hearing so they can comment if you have any questions. There are two existing two-way driveways for these parcels that are being proposed to be converted to a one-way in and one-way out. And to accomplish that, there is a joint access proposed, which was briefly touched upon. Our regulations allow the applicant to take credit for the 2 parking spaces that could otherwise be provided in the absence of that connection. That's what's being proposed here. We think that makes a lot of sense. It was kind of touched on briefly, but should you have any questions about that, I want to make sure that the applicant has a chance to address that while the hearing is still in session.
So the point being, if we went back and counted spaces and said what's going on here, just fewer, we'd understand what the credit was and all that. And
It's detailed on the site plan.
Right. But to understand this, there's a value in the change for the driveways that outweighs that it makes it worthy that you change the law.
Right. That's the rationale for regulation. I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that's what's being proposed there.
I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any member of the public who wishes to be heard on this item? Attorney Fitzpatrick, you're all set with rebuttal?
Nothing to add, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, very good. I'll close the public hearing. And I'll adjourn the meeting.